Hi there, my name's Logan, and I grew up the only son of a gardener. I've loved planting things and watching them grow for as long as I can remember. I guess that's the main reason I was a bit of an outcast. People at my old school looked at me funny. They whispered behind my back because they found it weird that a boy like me liked growing flowers. And I guess I can't blame them for thinking like they're back in the 90s. After all, our town was small. But even outcasts like me had a few friends. They've been friends since middle school, and they didn't find it weird that I was obsessed with gardening. They were always hanging out at my house, so they knew my dad. My friends would bring their consoles, and we'd game all through the weekend. And when other guys at school would pick on me, they'd have my back. So I was pretty close with Alec and Andy. But one day, they just stopped coming over. It was about the same time as a new neighbor moved in down the street. His name was Trace. Trace lived in a massive mansion, and there were always at least 3 sports cars parked in their driveway. I heard his parents were tech millionaires, and that's why Trace always had the best clothes, the fanciest stuff, and the latest consoles and games. I heard he had an entire room filled with every game imaginable, but I never saw it. Only Andy and Alec did. The 3 of them became fast friends, and I was excluded. Whenever I asked to hang out with my friends, they'd say they were busy, or that they had a family thing. Hey, guys, do you want to come by this weekend? Dad wants to take me fishing. He's got a cabin up by the lake, and if you'd like, you could come too. I heard they just opened up a new water park there. Oh, a water park? Yikes, we're not 12 anymore, Logan. Besides, I have a dentist thing this weekend. Yeah, and I need to go to my grandma's to watch her cat. I knew they were lying, but I didn't mind it. It did kind of affect me when I saw them both posting on their Instagram stories, and they were clearly at Trace's house, checking out his new VR goggles. From that day on, I knew they'd replaced me. A week after that, they made it official. Andy and Alec, my best friends since childhood, texted me that they no longer wanted to hang out. They told me I was too weird to be in their group because I liked flowers. And then they told me I couldn't afford any games, and it was no fun being around me. When my friends deserted me, I felt really and truly alone. The guys who made fun of me at school would push me around and pull pranks on me. Nobody was there to help me when I got lunch dumped on my head or when they pushed me into the freezing pool in the sports center. When I came home once covered in ketchup, I didn't manage to hide everything before Dad saw me. He was so furious that he marched into the principal's office and demanded that the boys who were tormenting me be expelled. But the principal just laughed. Are you kidding me? Expel those boys? Their parents alone have donated hundreds of thousands into our school. We were able to renovate our library thanks to them. Are you telling me to expel the children of our biggest donors? They're making my son's life a nightmare. Isn't it the school's job to guard its students' welfare? And why would I listen to a man who can't even afford to pay his son's tuition in full, when I have students who have showered this school with generosity? Of course, those kids were never expelled. They weren't even suspended or called into the principal's office. They were the terrors of the school, and it wasn't just me that they poked fun at, but nobody did anything because they were rich. So, my dad decided he was going to move us to a different town. He took a job at a school and became its gardener. It was a fancy boarding school that offered him a bigger pay and even provided us with a house inside the campus. The only trouble was it was an all-girls school. I say trouble, but it actually turned out to be such a great time. The school was kind enough to let me go there. They offered me a scholarship, and after passing their entrance exam, they let me continue my studies there. My first day was the weirdest thing ever. I walked in there as the only kid in a boy's uniform, and every pair of eyes stared at me. When I got to my classroom, there was an audible gasp. Some of the girls eyed me as if I was some sort of alien life form. Some of them looked at me as if I was their lunch. After my first class, every girl in that room crowded around me. They piled around me and asked me hundreds of questions. Why are you here? What's your name? Do you want to have lunch with us? Can you, be my boyfriend? They all followed me out into the corridor to my next class and all the way to the cafeteria, where even more girls crowded around me, curious to find out who I was and why I was there. Even the teachers were all smiles. The entire school was all girls, from the lunch ladies to the janitors to the headmistress. I discovered that it was just me and Dad and the entire campus who were guys. No wonder they were all eager to meet us. When they found out I loved gardening, like my dad, some of them invited me to their homes. There was a set of triplets in my class who approached me one day and asked me to come work for them. "I heard you're a miracle worker with roses." "Yeah, we have a rose garden at home and it's pretty sad. We grew it with our mom, but since she left, we couldn't get it to grow again. And now it's just a bunch of dried up twigs. If you can resurrect our garden, we'll pay you handsomely." I knew they didn't just want me to help them with their garden, especially when I got there and they were all by the pool, just watching me work. They kept giving me looks, and they kept shouting at me to leave the garden and join them by the pool. But of course, I wanted to make sure the roses came back to life. I didn't want to take their money and not do the job. After a couple of weeks of me visiting their garden, the first bud finally burst out of the struggling bushes. A few days later, their garden was in full bloom. When they saw it, they called me and screamed, demanding that I go to their mansion at once. I thought it was some sort of emergency, but when I got there, I saw that the roses were thriving. They jumped for joy and forgot all about trying to trick me into the pool with them. They all hugged me and thanked me for bringing back their mom's garden. They each planted a kiss on my cheek, and that made me blush. After news of my miracle work spread, every girl in the school wanted me to be their gardener. Of course, I included my dad, and together we would visit their gardens on weekends and make the whole town beautiful. Even the principal invited us over to her villa, where Dad trimmed the ivy that was creeping up her walls. Miss Jillian was so happy to see her house so immaculate that she hugged my dad. I guess that was when they started seeing each other. It was months into going to that new school that I became the most eligible bachelor there. To be fair, I was the only bachelor, for the students at least, because while the teachers and the principals were trying to compete for my dad's attention, the students were fighting over me. And I'm not complaining at all. Girls threw money at me just to pay a visit to their succulents. Some of them even bought plants just to have a reason to invite me over. They showered me with gifts and hugs and kisses. And they showered me with money. That 1 year alone, I made enough money to put myself through college. The girls all competed for my time. They invited me to their holiday houses, on their dad's boats, or to clubs that they owned. It was a wild ride. But Sasha and her sisters, Holly and Tamsin, were my most frequent clients. And I guess over the weeks and months, we became friends. My old friends heard all about my bizarre adventures that they messaged me and asked to hang out. They asked me if I could introduce them to my millionaire girls. Even Trace wanted me to hang out at his place. The boys who used to torment me, they came by the school and asked to be let in. They told security they were my friends. But as soon as I saw them, I told the guard I didn't know them. It became very clear to me that now that I was the prince of the all-girls school, people wanted to use me. I let them beg all they wanted, but I never hung out with them again. I had a blast with the triplets, and eventually, we all went on dates. The girls on campus got jealous that I started going out with them, so with Tamsin, Holly, and Sasha's permission, I took the other girls on dates too. That way, everyone was happy, and I kept getting hired as a gardener. Me and my dad taught those girls how to keep their yards beautiful. He and Principal Jillian eventually ended up getting married, and we moved to a beautiful villa next to the lake. On weekends, Sasha and her sisters would come by and we would have a nice barbecue. Once, we even had a massive party where all the girls from school attended. The life I live now is the total opposite of what I had before we moved. Back then, I was ridiculed. People called me weird and we were poor. Now we had all the money we needed, a huge house, and the love of everyone around us. Who knew all we needed was a little change in scenery?